hand closed around Nathan Cole's wrist before he ever saw the woman attached to it. He stopped in the middle of the crowded Denver airport and turned. The woman was somewhere in her 70s, silver-haired, dressed in a pale blue coat. Her eyes locked onto his face with such sudden relief that Nathan almost looked behind himself to see who she was really staring at. Daniel? Nathan had never seen her before. The woman's fingers tightened. You came back. Then the relief in her face disappeared almost as quickly as it had arrived. Her eyes moved past Nathan, searching the stream of travelers behind him. Where's Sloane? Her breathing quickened. Daniel, where's our girl? Nathan heard Jordan behind him. Nathan, not loud, not yet. Nathan glanced back. His chief of staff was pointing toward the gate less than 100 yards away. The boarding door was still open. Jordan held up 2 fingers. 2 minutes. Nathan looked at the woman again. She wasn't asking him for directions. She was lost. And right now, for reasons Nathan didn't understand, she believed he was the one person she could trust. I'm Nathan, he said gently. The woman stared at him. He didn't pull his wrist away. But I'm staying right here while we find Sloane. Her grip loosened just a little. Behind them, the final boarding announcement began. And only then did the other problem come crashing back into Nathan's mind. That flight was not one he could casually miss. It was the last flight that could get him to Atlanta in time for the biggest meeting of his career. For 13 weeks, Nathan's company, Cedar Reach Senior Health, had been preparing for one client, Blue Ridge Continuing Care Network. If Cedar Reach won the contract, it would become the largest agreement the company had ever signed. If they lost it, Cedar Reach would remain exactly what Nathan had spent the last 6 months trying not to admit it had become. A good company growing faster than its cash could support. Nathan's team was already in Atlanta. The final executive review was scheduled for that evening. Nathan's flight would have put him on the ground with enough time to reach Blue Ridge's offices before the session began. The next available flight would not. Blue Ridge had made one thing clear. They wanted the CEOs of both finalists physically in the room. They had already seen the software and heard the sales pitches. Tonight was about whether Cedar Reach had enough leadership, financial discipline, and operational depth to handle a rollout across dozens of senior communities. Nathan was supposed to answer those questions himself. Jordan stepped closer, keeping his voice low. I'll get airport staff. You go. Nathan looked at the woman. She was scanning every passing face now. Sloane? A family hurried past with rolling bags. One suitcase struck the edge of a metal bench with a sharp crack. The woman startled and moved closer to Nathan. Her hand found his sleeve. Daniel wouldn't leave me. Nathan had spent years in senior care before founding Cedar Reach. Enough years to know that when someone was frightened and disoriented, correcting every wrong detail could matter far less than making the next moment feel safe. He didn't pretend to be Daniel. He didn't argue about who Daniel was. He simply said, I'm staying with you. We'll find Sloane. Jordan stared at him. Nathan, they're about to close it. I know. 92 people work for this. Nathan looked toward the gate. A gate agent was speaking to the final passenger. For a second, Nathan didn't look noble. He looked tired. He rubbed a hand across his jaw and watched the door. Then the woman whispered, Please. Nathan turned back. Call Atlanta, he told Jordan. Tell Maya she's leading implementation. Rob takes financial questions. Have them send me anything they need before the session starts. Jordan's face tightened. Blue Ridge asked for you. I know. What do I tell them? Nathan looked at the woman beside him. The truth. I can't make the flight. Jordan exhaled slowly. He hated the answer. But instead of arguing again, he nodded and pulled out his phone. I'll handle airport staff too. Thanks. The boarding door closed. Nathan saw it. He let himself look at it for 1 second longer. Then he turned away. Okay, he told the woman. Let's go find your daughter. Nathan didn't lead the woman by the hand. He offered his arm. She took it. They had made it halfway toward the information counter when Jordan caught up after speaking with an airport employee. They're making an announcement, he told Nathan quietly. Atlanta knows too. Nathan nodded. Blue Ridge? I asked whether they'd let you join remotely. Nathan looked at him. Jordan shook his head. They won't. They said the whole point of tonight is an in-person leadership review. Maya and Rob can present for Cedar Reach, but they won't substitute you on video. Nathan absorbed that. So there is nothing else I can do until they go into the room. Not unless you learn to teleport. Nathan gave him a tired look. Helpful. I'm doing my best. The deal wasn't dead, but for now it was beyond Nathan's reach. The older woman looked up at him. Do you know where Sloane works? I don't. She works too much. Nathan smiled. That narrows it down to most of America. She frowned at him for a moment, then gave a small laugh. It was the first sign that the fear was easing. Nathan was about to ask her name when he heard a woman shout from across the concourse. "Mom!" The older woman stopped. A younger woman came running toward them. She was dressed neatly enough to look as though she'd stepped off a business flight. But there was nothing composed about her face. She reached the older woman and wrapped both arms around her. "Oh, thank God." The older woman blinked. "Sloane." Yes, it's me." Sloane pulled back only enough to check her mother's face and hands. "Did you fall? Does anything hurt?" "No." "Your head?" "My head is fine." Sloane checked one wrist, then her knees through the fabric of the coat. Only when she was satisfied that there was no obvious injury did she seem to notice Nathan standing nearby. Her mother touched his sleeve. "Daniel found me." Something crossed Sloane's face, understanding first. Then sadness. "My mother's name is Rose," she said. "I'm Sloane. Nathan." Sloane nodded toward Rose. "She has Alzheimer's." Nathan gave a small nod. She seemed disoriented. "I didn't want to make assumptions." Sloane looked at him more carefully. "You stayed with her." Nathan was about to answer when Sloane spoke again, as if she needed him to understand something. "I turned around for maybe 40 seconds. There was an older man who fell. She was right beside me. I helped him sit down and called someone over. When I turned back, her voice thinned. The suitcase was there. Mom wasn't." Nathan said, "You don't have to explain." Sloane looked at him. Anyone else might have told her she should have watched Rose more carefully. Sloane had already said it to herself 100 times. Nathan didn't. Rose looked at him again. "Daniel always knew where to find us." Sloane's expression softened. "Daniel was my father," she told Nathan quietly. "Mom's husband. We lost him 6 years ago." Nathan looked at Rose. That explained the relief he had seen in her face. A memory had reached across 6 years and put Daniel's name on a stranger. Jordan approached. "Atlanta has everything we can send them. Maya and Rob will go into the session tonight without us." Nathan nodded. Sloane's eyes moved from Jordan to Nathan. "You missed your flight because of my mother?" Nathan looked at Rose. "She needed someone to stay with her." That was all he said. But Sloane understood enough. Rose was tired. Now that the panic had passed, Nathan could see it in the way she leaned slightly into Sloane and kept flexing her fingers. Sloane noticed too. "We need to get you something to eat." "I had pretzels." "On the plane." "They were very good pretzels." "They were terrible pretzels." Rose considered that. "You may be right." Nathan smiled. Sloane looked at him. "Are you still trying to get to Atlanta?" Nathan shook his head. "No flight gets me there before the meeting now." Jordan lifted his phone. "And Blue Ridge won't let him join remotely. The team has the material. At this point, all we can do is wait for the session." That mattered. Nathan wasn't choosing coffee over his employees. There was simply no useful way for him to enter the room from Denver. Sloane hesitated. "Then would 1 cup of coffee be too much to ask? I'd like to thank you properly." "You don't owe me anything." "I know." She glanced at Rose. "I'd still like to." Nathan looked at Jordan. Jordan's phone was already buzzing again. "You might as well," Jordan said. "I'm going to keep the team reachable until they go in." Rose took Nathan by the forearm. "Nobody should solve problems hungry." Nathan laughed. Jordan pointed at Rose. "Finally, someone around here with a workable strategy." They found a quiet cafe near the windows. Before Nathan sat down, Jordan caught his shoulder. "I still hate that we missed that plane." "I know. I don't hate why." Nathan looked at him. Jordan nodded toward Rose. Then his phone rang again, and he stepped away. Nathan watched him go. He was grateful Jordan had said it, because Nathan wasn't sure yet how he felt about everything himself. He knew he would not have left Rose frightened and alone. He also knew 92 people were now waiting to find out what his decision had cost them. Both things could be true at the same time. If stories about protecting someone's dignity when they're at their most vulnerable matter to you, consider subscribing and stay with Nathan because the hardest part of his choice was still ahead. Rose pushed the sugar bowl toward him. "You look like you need 2. "I probably do. 3 then." Sloane smiled despite herself. And for the first time since the gate closed, Nathan sat down. Nathan did something Sloane noticed almost immediately. He talked to Rose. Not around her, not through Sloane. To her. "What did you do before you retired?" Rose stirred her tea. "Piano." "You played?" "I taught." "How long?" Rose looked toward the windows. "A long time." Nathan waited. She glanced back. 38 years, maybe. That's a lot of scales. Children hate scales. So did I. Rose looked offended. You quit? After 8 months. Coward. Nathan laughed. Sloane looked down at her coffee. There was something strange about hearing her mother tease someone again, not because Rose never joked anymore. She did. But lately conversations often turned into tests without anyone meaning them to. Do you remember this person? Do you know where we are? What did you eat? Did you take this pill? Nathan wasn't testing anything. He was simply listening. Rose began telling him about a student named Andrew, who loved playing Beethoven, but refused to practice slowly. He always rushed the middle. Nathan nodded. What did you do? Rose stopped. Her brow tightened. Sloane knew that look. The thread was gone. For years, Sloane's instinct had been to rescue those moments. Fill in the missing word. Offer the answer. Save her mother from knowing she'd lost something. Nathan didn't. He waited a few seconds, then said, Was Andrew the one who hated practicing? Rose looked at him, then her face loosened. Yes, oh yes. She tapped the table. Everything had to be fast with that boy. I made him play the boring measures twice. Nathan smiled. Cruel. Effective. She continued the story. Soon she was laughing. Not politely, really laughing. Sloane watched her mother wipe the corner of one eye. Nathan caught Sloane looking at him. What? She shook her head. I haven't heard her laugh like that in a while. Nathan looked back at Rose. She has good stories. Rose nodded. I do. A little later, Nathan mentioned his own mother. She needed more help during the last few years of her life. The care wasn't always the hardest part. Getting everyone to talk to each other was. Sloane looked interested. What do you mean? Doctor's office says one thing. Home care agency has another schedule. A family member handles transportation. Someone else is tracking medications. Half the stress comes from information living in 6 different places. Sloane leaned back. And Cedar Reach puts it in one place? Nathan glanced at her. You heard Jordan say the company name. I pay attention. He smiled. Yes, that's the idea. What happens when one family suddenly needs home care, transportation, medication reminders, and 3 specialists? Nathan's expression changed slightly. That is a surprisingly specific question. I know a little about the sector, apparently. He answered her anyway. And without realizing it, Nathan had just given Sloane the first reason to think about Cedar Reach as something other than the company whose CEO had helped her mother. Rose was halfway through a story about an old recital when she stopped looking at Nathan. She looked at Sloane instead. Her expression became polite. Careful. Were you one of my students? Sloane's smile disappeared. No, Mom. Rose waited. It's Sloane. Rose repeated the name under her breath. Sloane. For one hopeful second, Sloane thought recognition might return. It didn't. Rose reached across the table and touched the sleeve of Sloane's blouse. Did your mother make this? Sloane swallowed. No. Nathan looked down at his coffee. He knew enough not to insert himself into that moment. Sloane had built half her life around avoiding helplessness. At Juniper Crest, she could move a meeting, replace an advisor, rewrite a term sheet, challenge a model, or walk away from a bad investment. With Rose, control kept failing, sometimes gently, sometimes in 4 quiet words at an airport cafe. Nathan waited until Rose turned toward him again. Then he asked, Did any of your students ever learn Gershwin? Rose's attention shifted. Of course. Was he harder than Beethoven? Rose looked almost offended by the comparison. Different. And just like that, the room had somewhere else to go. Nathan had not fixed anything. That was what Sloane noticed. He hadn't tried. He had simply let Rose keep her dignity while the moment passed. Minutes later, something in Rose's expression changed again. She looked at Sloane and frowned. You cut your hair. Sloane froze. She had cut it 6 months earlier. Yes, I liked it longer. Sloane laughed softly. I know. Rose nodded toward Nathan. You're smiling at him. Mom, I have eyes. Nathan looked at his coffee. Sloane pointed at him. Don't you dare. I haven't said a word. That face counts. Nathan almost answered. Instead, Jordan came back to the table. Maya and Rob are about to go in. Nathan looked at the clock. The executive session in Atlanta was beginning. Jordan handed him his phone. Maya wants you for 30 seconds before they shut devices down. Nathan took it immediately. Maya, we're ready, she said. You know the answers. I know. Don't try to be me in that room. Maya laughed once. Wasn't planning to. Nathan smiled despite himself. You've got this. The line ended. For the next hour, there would be no call Nathan could make that would help them. All he could do was wait. And that was something Nathan had never been particularly good at. Nathan didn't stay at the cafe indefinitely. Once Rose had eaten and Sloane had arranged for their luggage and a car home, he stood. "I should get back to Cedar Reach." Sloane nodded. "You should," Rose frowned. "So soon?" Nathan smiled. "People are waiting for me." Sloane reached into her purse and pulled out a pen. Then she glanced at the folded boarding pass, still sticking out of Nathan's jacket pocket. "May I?" Nathan handed it to her. On the blank back, Sloane wrote an email address. Under it, she added, "They'll read the deck. Sloane." Nathan looked at the address. The domain caught his attention immediately. "Juniper Crest?" Sloane nodded. "You know them? If you work anywhere near senior services, you know Juniper." That made something flicker in her eyes. Nathan noticed but didn't press. "Do you work with them?" "I do." "What exactly are you offering?" "Nothing guaranteed." She tapped the email address she had written. "Juniper's aging services team is reviewing several companies for a new pilot. If Cedar Reach is what you say it is, send them the deck. I'll make sure someone reads it." Nathan studied the handwriting on the back of the boarding pass he had just failed to use. "So this isn't a rescue?" "No." Sloane's mouth curved slightly. "It's an introduction." Nathan folded the boarding pass and put it back in his jacket. Before he could leave, Rose opened her handbag. "Wait." She pulled out a small velvet pouch. Sloane's face changed. "Mom, what are you doing?" Rose opened it. Inside was a delicate necklace with 2 matching half-hearts. She separated them, then held one toward Nathan. "This is yours." Nathan did not take it. Sloane reached gently for her mother's wrist. "Mom, that's Aunt Claire's necklace." Rose frowned. "She said one was for Sloane." "I know. And one was for the man who finally made her slow down." Sloane closed her eyes. "Mom." Nathan crouched beside Rose's chair. "Rose." She looked at him. "Let's let Sloane keep both pieces safe today." Rose looked suspicious. Nathan smiled. "You can decide what to do with them another time." Rose looked at Sloane, then back at Nathan. After a few seconds, she placed the half-heart in Sloane's palm. "Don't lose it." "I won't." Nathan stood. Before leaving, he looked at Rose. "Would a hug be all right?" Rose opened her arms. "You're slow, but you learn." Nathan laughed and hugged her. When he stepped back, he said, "You two take care of each other." Rose nodded toward Sloane. "She takes care of everybody except herself." Sloane sighed. Nathan didn't joke about it. He simply looked at her for a moment. Then he left the airport. Atlanta was still deciding what his choice would cost him. By the time Nathan reached Cedar Reach's office, the Colorado sky outside the conference room windows had begun to darken. Atlanta was 2 hours ahead. Blue Ridge's session had been running for more than an hour. Eleanor Beckett was already there. So was Patrick Shaw, Cedar Reach's CFO. Nathan had barely set down his bag when Jordan's phone rang. He looked at Nathan before answering. That look was enough. Jordan listened. Asked one question, then another. Finally he ended the call. Nathan didn't make him say it twice. "HarborLink?" Jordan nodded. Blue Ridge chose them. Nathan stood still. 13 weeks, flights, late nights, product revisions, operations plans. A team in Atlanta that had walked into the hardest room of the year without him. Gone. Jordan continued quietly. Maya said the product portion went well, but when Blue Ridge got into executive readiness, they kept coming back to the same concerns. Cash, leadership depth, whether we could manage that size of rollout. Nathan looked out through the glass. His absence had not single-handedly lost Cedar Reach the deal, but it had confirmed exactly what Blue Ridge already feared. Sloane's words from the airport came back to him. Because of her, Nathan knew the answer he would still give. For her, that's different. He was disappointed, angry at the outcome, and still unwilling to pretend that leaving Rose frightened and alone would have been the better human choice. Eleanor let the silence sit for a moment. Then Patrick placed a single sheet of paper on the table. "The deal isn't our only problem." Nathan looked down. Patrick said, "At our current spending rate, we have 41 days. And suddenly, Blue Ridge was no longer just the biggest deal Cedar Reach had lost. It was the deal they may have needed to survive. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Eleanor leaned forward. 41 days until what?" Patrick answered plainly. "Until we don't have enough cash to operate normally." He turned to Nathan. "If nothing changes, after the second payroll next month, we're no longer talking about cuts in theory." Nathan knew what that meant. Teams, jobs, families. One board member spoke first. "Was staying at the airport worth this?" Eleanor turned toward him. That's not the useful question. It matters, Nathan answered before the argument could grow. I would have stayed with her again. The room went quiet. Then he added, that doesn't mean I get to ignore what it cost. Eleanor nodded. Good. So what did Blue Ridge see? Nathan stared at the table for a moment. Too much of Cedar Reach still depends on me. Patrick didn't disagree. Nathan continued. They didn't reject us because I missed one flight. My absence confirmed something they'd already been worried about. And what are you going to do about it? Eleanor asked. Nathan opened his laptop. I want Maya named secondary executive lead for enterprise clients. Rob gets authority to sign within agreed limits. No major client gets 1 point of failure. If I disappear for 24 hours, Cedar Reach still needs to be able to answer for itself. Another board member said, that's an operating fix. It doesn't replace Blue Ridge. No. Nathan looked at Patrick. So let's work on the money. The next 2 hours were ugly, practical, and necessary. Hiring stopped. Expansion spending froze. Nathan cut his own compensation first. Several executives followed. None of it solved the problem. It only gave them more time. When the meeting finally ended, Nathan walked through the mostly dark office. One light was still on in care operations. Lila, one of the managers, was reviewing a family support issue on her screen. She looked up. Blue Ridge? Nathan shook his head. They chose someone else. Lila absorbed that. Then she looked back at the screen. I've got a family in Fort Collins whose mother keeps missing transportation to physical therapy. We were supposed to roll out the updated ride coordination next month. Nathan knew what she was really asking. Are we still building it? Lila nodded. Nathan didn't give her false certainty. I'm trying to make sure we can. Lila looked at him for a moment. Okay. Nathan walked on. 92 employees no longer felt like a statistic. Neither did the families they were serving. Nathan did not email Juniper that night, or the next morning. He wanted to know whether Cedar Reach still had a path that did not depend on a woman he'd met because her mother got lost. He called an existing investor. They still believed in Cedar Reach, but they could not put in more money that quarter. The bank reviewed the new numbers and declined to expand the credit line without Blue Ridge. Then an acquisition offer arrived. Patrick brought it into Nathan's office. The number isn't bad. Nathan read the operating plan. They'd cut operations. A lot of it. How many people? Patrick didn't answer immediately. Enough. The buyer wanted Cedar Reach's software and some client contracts. They did not want the company Nathan had built around them. Nathan closed the offer. No. Patrick leaned back. I'm not telling you to take it. But saying no has a price too. Nathan nodded. I know. That was becoming the lesson of his week. There were no clean decisions. Only choices whose cost you had to be willing to own. By Friday, Cedar Reach had reduced spending enough to stretch its runway from 41 days to roughly 8 weeks. Patrick came into Nathan's office after dinner. We bought time. Nathan looked up. How much? Enough to stop panicking. That sounded optimistic. Don't get excited. Patrick sat down. We bought time. We did not solve anything. After he left, Nathan remained at his desk. He reached into his jacket pocket for his keys. The folded boarding pass slipped onto the desk. Nathan turned it over. Sloane's handwriting was still there. They'll read the deck. He stared at it. The ticket had once represented the room he'd failed to reach. Now there was another room written on the back. Nathan had tried the ordinary doors. They had stayed closed. Maybe this wasn't rescue. Maybe it was exactly what Sloane had promised. An introduction. Nathan opened his laptop and sent the deck. The reply came the next morning. Not from Sloane. From Juniper Crest's aging services team. They wanted Cedar Reach's current financials, customer retention data, and implementation history. They also wanted a call that afternoon. Nathan forwarded the email to Jordan. Jordan walked into his office 10 minutes later. This is real. I assumed emails usually are. No. Look at who was copied. Nathan scrolled. Office of Sloane Whitaker, Chief Executive Officer. Nathan stopped. Jordan watched his face. You didn't know? Nathan looked at him. Jordan pointed at the screen. Sloane Whitaker runs Juniper Crest. Nathan sat back. He knew the firm. Everyone in his part of healthcare did. Juniper wasn't a household name, and Sloane wasn't a celebrity CEO. She had only taken the top job about a year and a half earlier and rarely appeared in public-facing industry events. Nathan simply had never connected her name to the woman sitting beside Rose in an airport cafe. She had introduced herself as Sloane, and Nathan had never asked for anything more. Jordan stared at him. You had coffee with Sloane Whitaker and had no idea who she was? Nathan thought about Rose's face when she'd asked her own daughter if she was one of her piano students. She was busy being a daughter. Jordan's expression softened. Fair enough. The first call went well enough that Cedar Reach was invited into Juniper's formal strategic review. They were not alone. Several companies were being considered for a limited aging services pilot and possible investment. Nathan looked at the invitation. Jordan said, "So she didn't hand you a lifeline?" "No. She wrote an email address on the back of your useless boarding pass." Nathan smiled slightly. "That may be worse. But you sent the deck." "I did." 2 days later, Nathan walked into Juniper Crest's Denver office. Through a glass wall, he saw Sloane standing at the head of a conference table. 6 people were listening while she spoke. At the airport, Nathan had seen a frightened daughter. Here, he saw the rest of her. The room moved when she did. When the meeting ended, Sloane stepped out. "Mr. Cole." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "That's how we're doing this? Until the review ends." Nathan nodded. "Understood." And just like that, whatever personal connection had started at an airport was placed on the other side of a professional line. Exactly where it needed to be. Sloane took Nathan into a small conference room. "I want to be very clear about something." "Good start." She ignored the joke. Juniper was already reviewing senior care coordination before we met. Nathan nodded. "After the airport, I asked the team to screen Cedar Reach." "So you did influence this?" "I influenced whether someone looked." Sloane held his gaze. "Not what they saw. That distinction mattered," she continued. "The preliminary review found things they like. Customer retention is strong. Families actually use the product. The problems are obvious too. We grew too fast. Yes. We leaned too heavily on Blue Ridge. Yes. And too much responsibility ran through me." Sloane nodded. "You've been busy." Nathan almost smiled. "It's been a week." She folded her hands. "I disclosed that we met under unusual personal circumstances." Nathan's expression sharpened. "The committee knows about Rose? They know my mother was present. They do not know the details. Keep it that way." Sloane paused. Nathan leaned forward. "If Cedar Reach needs your mother's worst hour to make its case, we're not ready for the room." For several seconds, Sloane said nothing. Then she nodded slowly. "I agree. One more question." "Yes? Are you voting?" "No." Nathan looked surprised. "I've recused myself from the final decision. David Mercer is leading the review." Nathan relaxed visibly. Sloane noticed. "You're relieved." "I'd rather earn a no than wonder what a yes meant." Something in her expression softened. "The team will not be gentle." "Good. They'll ask why Blue Ridge walked." "They should. They'll ask whether your numbers work without it." Nathan took a breath. "They should ask that too." Sloane stood. "Then I'll see you after the process is over." Nathan looked at her. "After? If there's anything left to talk about." There was. Both of them knew it. Neither touched it. Not yet. The next 10 days were harder than Nathan expected. Juniper's team did not care that he'd helped Rose. They cared whether Cedar Reach was viable. They asked why some implementations ran late. Why the company had spent so much on expansion. Why too much projected growth had been tied to one contract. Why Nathan had remained the person too many enterprise clients expected to see personally. Nathan answered. So did his team. There were no speeches. Mostly there were spreadsheets, calls, uncomfortable questions, and the occasional silence when somebody realized the answer wasn't flattering. The final review happened on a Thursday morning. Sloane was not in the room. David Mercer sat across from Nathan with 4 other committee members. He opened Cedar Reach's old forecast, then the new one. "These aren't the same company." Nathan looked at the pages. "They are." David tapped the old forecast. "This version assumed Blue Ridge." "Yes. Without Blue Ridge, half this growth disappears." "More than half in year 1. David looked up. "You're correcting me downward?" "It's your meeting. I figured honesty would save time." A few people smiled. David didn't. "So defend the original plan." Nathan looked at it. "I can't." The room became still. Nathan changed the slide. The revised plan looked smaller, fewer markets, slower hiring, less impressive growth, more discipline. "We're pausing national expansion. We're focusing on the 3 markets where retention is strongest. We'll add regions when the existing ones can support it." Another committee member asked, "Why should we invest in a company that just cut its own forecast?" Nathan looked at the old numbers. "Because those numbers are gone." He let that sit for a second. "Don't invest in the forecast we lost." Then he turned back to them. "Judge the business we can actually build from here." After that came specifics. What customers stayed? Where did Cedar Reach save families time? How expensive was each new market to support? Could the new leadership structure function without Nathan in every major meeting? One committee member waited until the end. I have a question about Blue Ridge. Nathan nodded. You missed the final executive review. Yes. Why should we trust the same CEO with our capital? Nathan could have explained everything. Rose, the airport, the fear in her face. He didn't. Missing the meeting exposed a weakness in how I built the company. The committee member waited. Nathan continued. I fixed the part I could fix. Cedar Reach now has backup executive ownership for every major account, delegated authority, and a real contingency plan. You'd still make the same personal choice? Nathan paused. That isn't what you're investing in. The answer caught the room off guard. He continued. Judge what I changed afterward. David closed his folder. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Nathan walked out. Jordan was waiting down the hall. How was it? They spent 40 minutes finding every reason not to invest. Jordan nodded. That's annoyingly normal. Nathan laughed once. Then they waited. The decision was now in the hands of people who owed Nathan nothing, exactly where he wanted it. The call came the following afternoon. Juniper selected Cedar Reach for a limited pilot across a small group of senior communities. If Cedar Reach met the operating goals, Juniper would invest in stages. The commitment was enough to keep Cedar Reach moving, while the pilot proved whether the company deserved more. It did not make Nathan rich. It did not erase every problem. Patrick explained it more simply. We can keep the doors open. Nathan looked at him. And if the pilot works, we stop counting the days. Eleanor smiled for the first time in weeks. Sloane opened the door. Nathan looked through the conference room glass at Lila, Maya, Rob, Jordan, and the rest of the team. The team got us through it. The first pilot month was messy. One rollout ran behind schedule. Caregivers complained that a family update feature had too many steps. Nathan's team rebuilt it. Cedar Reach stopped trying to look bigger than it was. It focused on becoming better than it had been. And slowly, the company became less dependent on Nathan himself. One afternoon, Maya handled a major client problem without calling him. Nathan learned about it 2 hours later. Jordan expected him to be annoyed. Instead, Nathan said, Good. Jordan looked suspicious. You feeling okay? For once, Nathan had finally built something that could keep standing while he stepped out of the room. Sloane kept her distance while Juniper's review and investment process were active. Their conversations stayed professional, short, necessary. When the final documents were signed, another Juniper partner became the firm's point person with Cedar Reach. That afternoon, Nathan received a text. It's closed. He stared at it for a moment, then typed, So now I can ask? Sloane's reply came a minute later. Depends what you're asking. Coffee, he added. One that doesn't cost me a contract. This time her answer came quickly. That would be an improvement. Their second coffee was different from the first. Nobody was lost. No client was waiting in another state. Nathan learned that Sloane hated restaurants that turned simple food into an explanation. Sloane learned Nathan could not dance. Not modestly bad. Actually bad. Rose learned these things in pieces. Some days she knew Nathan as soon as he walked in. Other days she asked Sloane why that nice man had come over again. Once she called him Daniel. Nathan corrected her gently and moved on. Another afternoon, she remembered Nathan perfectly, but asked Sloane whether they still needed to catch their flight home from Boston. The disease did not become easier because people loved her. Love didn't restore what Alzheimer's took, but the people around Rose became better at protecting what remained. Her humor, her choices, her music, her place at the table. Sloane changed too. She still planned. She still checked everything twice. But she accepted more help. Not because she stopped caring, because she finally understood that caring did not require carrying every burden alone. Nearly a year after the airport, Sloane said something to Nathan that neither of them could forget. When Mom disappeared, I had every resource I could possibly need. Nathan waited. I had a phone. Airport staff answered me immediately. I could ask for help and people listened. She looked down. And I was still terrified. Nathan knew what question came next. What happens to families who don't have any of that? The answer became a small Colorado project. Cedar Reach partnered with a local nonprofit and Juniper's Community Foundation to create the Rose and Daniel Memory Dignity Fund. They kept it practical. Respite care help for exhausted caregivers. Safe return identification. Transportation. Basic home safety support. Small emergency grants. Caregiver training. Nothing about curing Alzheimer's. The first year was designed to help a limited number of Colorado families get through difficult days with a little more support. Before using Rose's name, Sloane asked her. It happened on a clear afternoon. Rose listened carefully. And Daniel too? If you want. Rose considered it. Daniel would have liked that. Nathan smiled. You think? He always wanted his name on something. Sloane laughed. Dad had his name on the mailbox. Rose waved a hand. That was a very small mailbox. The launch event months later was equally modest. A few families, caregivers, local partners, Cedar Reach staff. One mother spoke about using a respite grant to attend her own daughter's graduation without leaving her father alone. Nathan watched from the back. That mattered more to him than any oversized check on a stage ever could. When the event ended, most people went home. Nathan went looking for Rose. He found her in a small room near the back of the community center. Sloane sat beside her. Rose was looking through an old program from the event. Nathan stepped inside. There you are. Rose looked up. Nathan stopped. He had learned not to search her face too quickly, not to demand recognition before it arrived. So he waited. Rose studied him for several seconds. Then she smiled. You're Nathan. The words were simple. Nathan's throat tightened anyway. I am. Sloane lowered her eyes for a moment. A year earlier, Rose had looked at Nathan and seen Daniel. Today, she saw Nathan. Nothing about that moment promised tomorrow. That was why it mattered. Rose closed the program. Then she opened her handbag. Sloane recognized the small velvet pouch immediately. Mom. Rose ignored her. She pulled out the two-piece heart necklace Aunt Claire had once given the family years ago. Claire had teased Sloane when she was younger that one half was hers, and the other belonged to whoever finally convinced her there were things in life more important than work. Sloane had never taken the joke seriously. Rose apparently had. She separated the two halves. Nathan remembered the airport, Rose holding one out to him while believing he was someone else. He had refused it then. Now Rose put one half in Sloane's palm. Then she held the other toward Nathan. Nathan didn't move. Rose, are you sure? Rose looked at him. I know who you are. Sloane went very still. Nathan lowered his eyes to the small silver heart. Rose continued, You're not Daniel. No. Good. That surprised him. Rose smiled. Daniel was already taken. Sloane laughed through tears. Nathan did too. Rose moved the half-heart closer. And you're Nathan. This time, Nathan accepted it. Rose reached for both their hands and brought them together until the two small pieces touched. There. Sloane was crying openly now. Rose glanced at her. Oh, don't start. I'm not starting anything. You're crying. I know. Rose looked at Nathan. She does that. Nathan smiled. I've noticed. Rose closed Sloane's fingers around one half and Nathan's around the other. Neither of you loses these. Sloane wiped her cheek. Yes, Mom. Nathan nodded. Yes, ma'am. Rose frowned. Don't call me ma'am. It makes me sound old. Nathan laughed. Then Sloane reached for his hand. Rose placed hers on top of both. The first time Rose had touched Nathan, she had been frightened in a crowded airport, holding on to him because her memory had carried her backward. Now, for one clear and precious moment, she knew exactly who was sitting beside her, and she chose to hold on anyway. If 92 jobs had depended on that flight, would you have stayed with Rose or boarded the plane?